Welcome to Innovating Leadership, Co-Creating Our Future. I'm your host, Maureen Metcalf, founder and CEO of the Innovative Leadership Institute, where leadership meets innovation and strategy becomes results. Today, I'm delighted to have a conversation that goes to the heart of something we hear from boards and executive teams with striking regularity. They're investing in leadership, and it's not producing the bench, the continuity, or the decision-making quality their organizations need. Gallagher's research puts a number on that feeling. 59% of organizations report a shortage of effective leaders. Only 6% feel confident in their pipeline. That's not a talent gap. That's a system problem. Our guest today is Steve Dion, National Managing Director of Leadership and Organizational Development at Gallagher, one of the world's leading risk management and consulting firms. From where you sit, is this truly a crisis, or is it a signal that our traditional leadership models are no longer fit for today's environment?
I've had 30 years of HR business and consulting experience. And so I don't want to be an alarmist here. And I have seen over the many years of doing this work that organizations have really always been challenged with the difficulty of, to some degree, of finding the right leaders to run their organization. But our recent data indicates, and my personal experience in working with clients, that we do have an increasing leadership effectiveness gap. And that is slowly getting worse over time. AI is not making that better. It's actually kind of shining a light on that. And as we talk today, I think listeners will realize that the traditional leadership models don't fit today's environment. And the sooner organizations see that as a priority, the better off they will be.
So what I hear you saying is it's not a training problem. It's actually the entire leadership system, how we define leadership, not just as a human, but as a system, integrating things like decision rights and culture and sensing and sense making and visioning, all the activities leaders do is shifting. And I totally agree in what I'm seeing. Based on your work with organizations, where are most companies breaking down in that system today?
I think part of it is the way roles are structured. We see increased levels of burnout, stress. I mean, we've been hearing this, reading about it all over the place. And organizations need to create jobs that are more doable and sustainable and have situations where employees want to take on leadership roles. And that's some of what is very interesting in this recent study is we're finding the next generation of leaders are saying, I look up the org chart, and I don't want those jobs.
Can you share some of those data? Because I have also read it, but anecdotally. So what is the data telling us? And is there a why, or just that this is where we are?
From a system perspective in the organization, only 6% of organizations feel confident in their pipeline of employees to take on key roles. So that is a huge warning cry right there. And then if you look from the employee level, 53% of early career employees that are entering the workforce, senior leaders are seeing them as weaker in their skill sets in terms of their ability to assume future responsibilities. So there is a leadership challenge and pipeline issue there. And then on top of that, the youngest generations are saying that they are not interested in taking on more senior level roles as they used to report.
When you say the youngest generation, I'm going to ask both of you and I to go back in the Wayback Machine. Would we have said something similar when we were 22?
The 50-year-old, when they were 25, were saying, I want to make more money. I want to move up the career ladder. I'm willing to relocate. I'm willing to work hard. I work for a company, and whatever they ask of me, I'm going to do. The 20-somethings that are joining the organization, people that are rounding 30 that are looking to go into management roles, the data is showing that they're saying we're looking for more work-life balance. We don't want to have stress in jobs. I am willing to not get a bigger house and not get the nicer car and be able to golf on Wednesdays or not have a job that I feel is oppressive. So being able to create roles that the next level of generation wants to go into is really one of the challenges that we are facing.
Yeah, as I think back, I remember having a conversation with my boss. This will date me, where I said, I drive a Chevette. That is not my goal in life. I would like
Right.
something different. And it wasn't about the stuff necessarily, but as a measure of the amount of work I was doing matched with compensation. Uh,
Absolutely.
but what I hear you saying is, and I assume we've all been reading various, again, anecdotal and experiencing, younger generations aren't looking for what we were looking for. So we do require a systemic change. Can you give us a little bit more guidance then on what that looks like?
There's three things that organizations should consider doing. Yes, one is reconsider how roles are designed and what they look like. Leadership roles really need to be more sustainable, and we need to
Mhm.
rethink the workload that those roles have, the decision structures, as you mentioned, within the organization, and what the person has to sacrifice to be in that job. People need to look up and say, I want that role, not, gee, there's going to be a lot of trade offs. I'm going to trade off 20 hours more a week in my personal life to become a manager or director at that organization. But from there, then the next thing we need to do is really build leadership pipelines intentionally and not optimistically, having a process where there's a succession planning program where we say, as long as we, can identify two or three names to put below as a possible candidate for this job, we're going to feel good that we have a pipeline. Really what we need to do is, look at the structures, early career employees, give them more exposure, give them more coaching and development, give them training programs, having regular career conversations, which by the way, our data shows that 32% of the respondents said that is not happening in their organization. So that's a second really important part. And then the third, I think, especially to speak to this younger generation, is to reframe leadership roles as growth opportunities and impact opportunities, not just about status. If leadership is positioned as a situation to be able to make an impact, to learn, to develop, and not just to take on more responsibility, then I think that speaks to the heart of what the newer, younger generation is looking for out of the work that they do.
That seems like such a crucial point because if we step back and look at the biggest levers we experience in the world, and many people would say they are unhappy with various things, and depending on
Mhm.
your political side, it's one thing or the other, but it's the leaders who move the needle.
Yeah, I think organizations should consider what the brand of their leadership and management structure is. It has a life to it. People label it as something. So leaders of leaders could look at the brand and say, is this a sought after place to be a manager or a leader or
Yeah.
executive, or is it not? And if it isn't, then I think we should look at culture. We should look at workload. We should look at the way, we create systems for approving job racks, for recruiting. I mean, there's a systems point of view to this, but I do think it
Mhm.
starts with some understanding of culture. And are we trying to create a culture at our organization where you're supposed to put on the heaviest pack and start walking until you're exhausted? That's not sustainable.
So, Steve, is there a company or a couple of companies that you hold out as doing this exceptionally well? Because I'm imagining some of our listeners as senior leaders who put on the heaviest pack 20 years ago or 30 years ago are saying that's just how the system is.
I don't think I want to call out a particular client name one way or
Okay.
the other, but what I would say is that organizations that we work with that embrace having a people forward approach. They want to be considered a great workplace. They value being on those lists. They study what that looks
Yes.
like. They have a different lens to be able to be focusing a little differently on how jobs are structured, the employee experience. They're not as focused on how can we manage our payroll as tight as we can, which means we're going to just throw a whole bunch at these people. And at the end of the day, on the backside, right, they're spending all this money in recruiting because people leave, and there's a lot of other hidden cost in those places. So I would say I do see a bifurcation in clients where some are very focused on the bottom line, and
Mhm.
almost ironically, it creates more business pressure and financial pressure. And those that are people focused end up reaping the benefits and having a stronger bottom line because they have loyal employees that are giving discretionary effort and they're focused on doing the right and most important work at the organization.
I'll give a couple examples of our clients. Our programs are typically structured as cohort-based programs. We start fairly senior, and then we move to the junior ranks. They're
Mm-hmm.
cross-functional, so people develop an understanding of how the business operates across not just my finance group or my sales group, because I think that's one of the early shortfalls is I know the people who sit around me that I work with, I don't know the enterprise. And what we've seen in taking this to more junior levels in the organization, some people see the opportunity to step up and they're excited about it, and they have better information. So they're not just saying, I don't want to do that because you people work too much, but this is exciting. And we also have people who say, I went through this, that's not for me, but good to know. We want to know once people have good information, what's not for you, so we don't consider you on that continuity list or succession list, only to get there and find out that you're not going to be.
Similarly to here at Gallagher, we run these leadership development cohort programs, and I think it's a great way, just like you said, to give people exposure to what future level roles might be, both the content in the program and being with peers, but also having more visibility to senior level people in their organization, help them better understand and make informed choices about where their personal gifts or talents are going to best be used. And then the organization can also be wise and not just say, this was the best sales person, they should be a sales manager. This person was a physician with some good people skills, we're going to put him as the chair of the department. We see those things all the time. So to be able to stop, help an organization understand what that should look like so that the next generation sees a leader that they want to look up to and someday maybe take that job, not say, why would I want that role? Look at that person. I've seen them gray their hair over the last 3 years while they're trying to, keep all the lights on in this department. So that's where it isn't sustainable. And that's what our data suggests from this study is why we have problems is the pipeline it was fractured.
One of the things also teaching grad students for a long time, especially in large organizations, are aspiring leaders see senior leaders inaccurately. So they're informed by what they've seen on TV. They haven't met the senior leaders in their organizations, or they're informed by what they're reading on Reddit or Substack or something. And I find that they are much more interested in the roles after they meet the real human beings who are generally incredibly decent, dedicated people. They're not the crazy people that we see on HBO miniseries.
Absolutely. Well said. We recently created a new executive presence program to get
Okay.
right to that notion and not executive presence like I need to show up polished, wearing the fanciest clothes, looking sharp. Our view and understanding of executive presence is a leader needs to show up authentically to the situation and be able to build trust, followership, and relationship. So being able to understand how you do show up, getting more comfortable in your skin, and then being able to lean into authentic conversations and have agency is part of what will create that flywheel of people saying, wow, that person 2 levels above me, I'm inspired by that, not their caricature of, like you said, some bad movie I watched.
So you said something that I find very interesting, and it helps authentic to the situation, not authentic. Because if you're authentically a horrible person, you should not be authentic in meetings. You should put on the mask and act like a decent human being. So showing up authentically to the situation where I'm talking to a team of of young leaders is going to be different than showing up where I'm talking to my board, and being able to flex is still authentic.
Absolutely. Adaptability, leadership, agility is as important as it ever has been, especially in the fast paced AI adoption world we are in right now. So, leaders being able to, on a daily basis, having a practice where they are self aware, they can self regulate, they can look at what the task is for this week, for this day, for this hour, and adjust themselves to be of maximum service to the work that they do. That's a challenging job for a leader, well, a manager, to maybe 8 meetings in a day. You have to show up in 8 different ways potentially to meet the job at hand. That's why we need to provide leadership development and training and support for these people and put people in a role where they leave that day going, that filled me up being able to do that. So there are situations where there is a pipeline of talent available to do that work. We just need to not then say, and then on top of that work, you're still doing 3 other people's jobs and you're a working manager. And, that's where the system starts to break down so that somebody doesn't have the mental space to create that awareness and self-regulation to show up as a leader that their employees need of them, from them.
You make such a crucial point that the energy required of me as a leader to show up and listen deeply in 8 hours of meetings a day, it is really a lot. I'm an introvert. Showing up for 8 hours of intense engagement, and then I've still got to do my quote work to prepare for the next day, prepare for the next meetings, do the follow-ups. And then I have to have a restorative practice so that I don't just walk out of meetings screaming at people. Or screaming isn't my style, but just being quiet and not engaging as deeply as I need to because I don't have the energy left.
Agreed. Completely agree with you. It can be a noble and important job, but it's not as easy as some people realize. And we need to care and feed and support those roles and help somebody who's going to go into that job, who needs to take a journey, especially that first year in a job where, you went from being a peer to somebody to being their leader and looking at the department, creating a strategy. When you first move into a managerial role, there's a lot going on. And so being able to have somebody ready for that task so you don't burn them out right away is really important. I do think, Maureen, that we do have a situation, though, where young entrants into the workplace, they're not lazy. All the data shows that these are motivated people that are very smart, that can use technology to get things done fast, but they want to make a difference and they want to make an impact, but they want to do it in some ways on their terms. So we can't have jobs that are so rigid and structured that the person isn't allowed to do work in the way that they want to do it and create meaningful relationships and responsibilities. So I think we have an opportunity here to utilize the next generation's viewpoints to create better leaders if we do this properly and with their ideas in mind.
So, Steve, you just said something that sparked a new thought, because I've heard all the complaints about they. the not us old people group want more balance. They want this and that. And yet, if I look at my own leadership journey and what's happened over the last few years, after decades of overworking and not taking care of myself, I am now making very deliberate choices to have more balance because I'm paid to show up and be smart. And that is different than paid to show up exhausted, over caffeinated, which I am still often, and overwhelmed because I haven't slept, I haven't eaten. I wonder if this seeking of balance can actually produce better leaders who don't make the mistakes that I made, thinking that the answer was always yes, no matter how ridiculous the question.
Well, I think we can thank the pandemic, frankly, for creating some new thoughts and ways in which we can operate to be healthier. People being home, slowing down, having a different pace of life, rethinking personal priorities, I think changed the relationship that employees have with their work forever. And I, if used well, I think it creates being able to work smarter, not harder. And that, though, creates the need for organizations to be more thoughtful on their strategy to make sure we're not just saying yes at the top level of let's do that, and then it trickles down three levels that somebody has 10 initiatives on their plate, only four of which are really important for the business. You know, be able to structure the where, the how much, and when we work is still being sorted in this sort of post-pandemic environment. And organizations that understand that new need, that can rise to the occasion to say, let's be strategic in the work that we do and help have be comfortable with employees that can have balance and just do a phenomenal job in their 40 hours or 37 and a half hours of work a week, and not say, well, I had to work 60 hours when I was growing up. You should have to do the same thing. And if you remind that person, they'll be like, yeah, that was awful. I missed my kids' games. Well, then why are you asking the next generation to repeat the same problem? And so I think we can slow down and be really efficient at the work that we do.
Hopefully, AI can help us create more balance. I know in my life right now, just like with earlier technology, it just gave me more capacity to do more stuff. I haven't personally yet made the decision to slow down, but that's also a personal issue. You have made the point that we as organizations and leaders of organizations need to be smarter about what we say no to, and even killing projects that may have made sense when we started them, but either they get deprioritized so we're not pulling people like toffee, or they get shelved for a while so that we can hit our biggest strategic goals.
We at Gallagher spend a lot of time with AI adoption and using AI and with clients and in many of the tools that we work with our clients in both the talent management space and the benefit space everywhere. And it absolutely can be used as not just a tool or a job aid, but an unlimited additional set of employees, assistants, admin teams. If used well, I think we will be able to create the conditions that create doable jobs. We have to be careful, like any other new tool or technology. If we then say it gives you capacity to add more and more and more, I think that's where the talent management system's going to break. And I predict that employees will not just say, fine, I'll start working like that. They'll say, I'm going to make different career choices. I'm going to maybe not be in a corporate business setting and make my money as a farmer. I mean, people are not just going to keep a career path, I think, like the baby boomer generation did.
Well, there are other options. So your research says 1 in 3 organizations say it's not prepared to fill critical leadership roles unexpectedly. And I know we've touched on some of this. What are the biggest mistakes companies are making in building continuity and what creates a more ready bench? Because a lot of companies are doing training. And what I hear is from you and from my experience, that's great. It is not always sufficient. And it's in some cases not the right training.
When you look at why early career employees are reluctant to pursue leadership roles, because that is what's driving that pipeline problem, is 67% say they desire to maintain stronger work-life balance, even if it means foregoing compensation. 50% say there's a perception that leadership roles have too much stress to them. And 44% say that they're concerned about inflexible restrictions in the way that they do the work. So I think it starts, again, I don't want to be a broken record here, but it starts with creating doable jobs. And I mean, I've been doing this work, as you have, for over 30 years now, and just training people to be better at taking on unrealistic expectations is not the mousetrap we want to build. We want to create roles and jobs that have well-being built in them. And then on top of that, be able to develop early career talent. And, I think organizations know how to do that. I believe in, still a big fan of individual leadership coaching for the right leader who's taking on a senior role that can help unpack and change their own mindsets that create just a new capacity for themselves to have agency, to lead and feel good to be able to lead. And these cohort-based programs, like we talked about earlier, to be able to build skills for knowing how to, have crucial conversations, give feedback, build trust, you manage your time. Think, all those basic blocking and tackling things are important or needed. I just think we've been spending time building sort of pieces of those skills without the entire system saying that the way roles and jobs are structured are going to create meaning for people in the future.
As I listened to you, I was coming to the same thing you just said. The system almost stepping back to my entire business strategy and certainly my HR and talent strategy, looking at that through the systemic lens. And to your point, yes, we need time management and all the things, because as leaders, we can't function without being efficient and effective. But how are we changing the mindset of the enterprise itself and the senior executives to believe that balance is appropriate, even though we're paying people high salaries? Because what I hear often is when you step into these ranks, that's just what it is.
I think it starts with values and culture again.
Okay.
And even if they're driven by profit and share price, do the walk to how do we get sustainable profitability and share price. It's with having a sustainable workforce. It isn't with paying people high, creating churn, and then every time when bonuses come out, 15% of your leaders leave. I mean, we see clients call us to help fix that problem because they see it. Every February when they give their bonus, people leave. Well, let's peel that back. Let's talk as a senior team about how we're structured, how we think about work, how we interact with each other. There are layers of pieces that create the employee experience that we need for somebody to say, I want to stay here. I know I'm heard. I'm making a difference. And I'm satisfying our client. I'm doing the work that I'm paid to do. But it requires intentionality. It would be akin, I talk to our clients a lot about this, is, most organizations have a robust financial system. They do budgeting. They know, every month they know where their money is, where it's coming, where it's going, where they're at. And especially if they're a publicly traded company, you're buttoned down.
Yeah, you have
and then
to.
You go to your talent management system, and once a year they create a chart of, who's going to be in what job over the next year, and then they go off on their merry way. So creating resources that create ongoing succession plans, talent plans, recruiting plans, and development paths to help people, and regularly truing that up as people come and go and changes happen, I think are really important. And we work with many very large organizations, 100-year-old organizations, and you think, their training program is almost non-existent for some. Their succession planning program is non-existent. You think you're absolutely wasting payroll dollars in the way you do this. So helping them build the capabilities and systems on not just the development of talent side, but also on how jobs evolve, move, change side, I think creates a much stronger business.
And so you're making the business case for human capital investments in the
Absolutely.
system, not just we got a coach for Bill because Bill's a top performer, but we've created an entire system that elevates the right people for what the business requires.
Absolutely. And in downturns, unfortunately, those are many of the considered discretionary effort jobs that go away. And we've had a lot of our clients said, we used to have this great, robust turnkey leadership program, and we just sort of wiped out the whole department and the whole work at the beginning of COVID because we weren't in person anymore. And then feel like they're starting from scratch 5 years later, and it's not meeting their needs, and it's not meeting the next new leader's needs as we identified in this study.
More than half of the organizations Gallagher's research believe leadership skills in new workforce entrants, so new workforce entrants, are weaker than previous generations. And you've pointed to this. Now let's talk about what capabilities are missing and how do we help organizations rethink?
When we identified the top leadership competency gaps in organizations, we found three key gaps. The first one is strategic clarity. The second is human-centered leadership. And the third is communication and transparency. There are many skills that leaders need, like coaching and talent development, but there really wasn't a gap. The need and the employee's ability to do it were there. But by far, it's creating strategic clarity. So I think that's an important opportunity for organizations to help build strategic thinking skills, decision-making skills, thought leadership skills for people that are running, whether it's a department leader, it's a supervisor, all the way through vice presidents and C-suite executives. They all need to have some level of strategy in the way that they discern the work that they do. And then the other side of that record really is with the strategy skills is the human-centered leadership skills. So being able to galvanize and motivate a group of people to operationalize that strategy is really, those two pieces by and large create what an effective leader is all about.
We launched a think tank this year, and our first year of focus is decision velocity. And so we talk about the beginning of that being sensing. And you've pointed to things like we have financial data, but how are leaders beyond the financial data in a world that is moving more quickly and in a way that's jerky? How am I looking across the landscape, gathering data, so sensing, sense making, getting the leadership team together with disparate points of view? So you and I, probably too similar. Who would we include in the conversation who saw the world differently, help us diagnose the situation? So sense making, and then sense giving, communicating. So to your point about communicating to the organization so that they can then make different choices. Because if we empower them, they've also got to have the same kind of structural mindset, and that changes as our world's changing.
Yeah, allowing someone in a lower level role to have decision-making rights, think through something, and possibly fail and give feedback and learn from that is an important part of the development process in and of itself. Their leader above them being able to coach them through that process to be able to help decide, when do I delegate that work? Is the person ready to own that area of responsibility and allow them to play in it is an important part of maturation to move through the organizational structure. And those, most of our clients that have very successful CEOs will say, thank goodness I was just fortunate to get this person to mentor me early on, to give me access to opportunity, to give me access to people, to pull me aside and say, what was that? Don't do that again. And, and just be very authentic with them. And what we need to do is to create a system that all employees have the ability to have relationships like that at work.
Steve, if you were advising a CEO or board listening today, what are the first 2 or 3 moves they should make in the next 90 days to strengthen leadership capacity and also avoid what your research is signaling, this idea that we have more than half of our organizations with a bench that's not ready?
I would say assemble the right resources to create a robust talent plan. Don't do this with half measures, and don't try to create some episodic moment in time. We're going to get people together. We're going to put a spreadsheet together and it sits there. I mean, really decide that your talent and the people you have in your organization are one of your most competitive advantages. And then back into that of what do we need to do to create the most robust system within there. And then if you do that, then having people with actual resources, whether they hire firms like ours or they have staff inside, being able to then look closer at your key jobs, assessing those roles, assessing the talent in those roles, ensuring having dialogue with those people, not just about are you meeting your metrics, but are you happy here? Are you planning to stay here? What does the future need to look like for you? I think those are the types of things that they need to do. And if you go through that exercise and look at that list and realize that you're not happy with some of the answers about the risks of either the person in the role possibly being burnt out, stressed out, or not performing, and there's risks, then I think they should look at their culture and look at some of their work processes and be a little more bold and be able to identify, are there some blocker people here that are creating havoc that we need to coach and address? Do we need to really rethink how many, our spans and layers and how many people do we have reporting to each person? Model out some financial elements to that, but understand that maybe sometimes adding a few roles can create savings on the back end, that there can be a return there and it's not a net loss to the bottom line if you have the right people in the right roles doing the right things.
So it does sound like stepping back and thinking about our values. For many organizations, we say our people are our most important asset. And I feel like I'm at the airport waiting for my skis to come off the conveyor belt and it's midnight and I call the customer service department and they tell me I'm their most important thing. And a half hour later, I'm still sitting on hold. It's hard to feel like I am important when the system itself does not create the conditions for our leaders to be balanced, healthy, basic, right? Healthy.
Absolutely. And checking in and asking somebody from boss to subordinate, how are you doing? I am your leader. I'm here to help create a condition at work that you love, not just tolerate. From a systems point of view, I think, when you do put people through a leadership development program or management program, and by the way, the younger generation says, I want more learning and development. They are learners. They expect their organization to teach them things. So being able to create a emerging leader program and saying, I want to put you in this is signaling I care about you. So it's not just you're actually getting development. It's also saying you're a member of this team and I support you. So at the system level, I think we can do that with programs like these leadership development programs. But from the most important relationship a person has at work typically is the person they report to. So making sure that that leader has space in their day to show up well for that person, and they know that is their job to help make sure that they have what they need to be successful. If everybody did that, we would have a lot less turnover and we would be able to create a talent pipeline that will meet the future challenges of organizations.
You make it sound so easy.
Yeah, easy to say. I know. But I mean, there are case studies. There are great organizations that people don't leave, that they fill role. 90% of all their senior roles are filled from inside the organization. If you create a plan or system, it is doable. This isn't just, boy, it's hard to find talent out there. Our recruiting department doesn't do a good job. I mean, those are signs that senior leadership is abdicating their responsibility to lead. You can do this. It's not easy, but it can happen, and it creates much stronger businesses. I've seen it time and again.
In the spirit of innovating leadership and co-creating our future, what is the one leadership choice you believe senior leaders or boards can make in the next 30 days? And what systems or practices must be in place so the choice sticks?
I believe that organizations should take the time to re-examine all of their leadership roles and focus on the incumbents in their roles with a new lens of what today's leaders need. Ensure that jobs are structured for the future. They're actually doable and sustainable as those jobs are written. And it provides meaningful impact for the person in the role. If they do those things, I think they'll have a better organization.
Beautiful. Thank you, Steve. Your insight is incredibly helpful.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you very much.
And how would people find you?
People can go to our website, ajg.com at Gallagher, and you're welcome to find me on LinkedIn, Steve Dion, and I look forward to having future conversations with people.
Beautiful. Thank you.